Hey everyone, in this video I'm covering a new update for the dialogue component which allows you to create dialogues entirely from blueprints. If you've had my asset from the beginning, you would create dialogues by adding branches to the component dialogue variable, which evolved to using the editor utility so you're not having to do multiple clicks after each play, and now you can do so with blueprints. There's a new level that's been added named Dialogue Blueprints, and if we open it, we can see 3 characters that have basic dialogues built out to show you how it works. Starting with the basic one, if we click and hit Ctrl B, we can jump our content browser to its location here in the templates folder. So let's open it up, and I'm also going to talk to him so we can see how it works. At the beginning, we have an event named Create Dialogues, which clears existing branches and starts with BML Add Choice Branch. BML stands for Blueprint Macro Library, as this node comes from the library that I've built with logic already set up for you to use. The first thing we can see is branch name is 1, which is our default first branch, the text, and player choices. We can see the NPC text here matches what's shown, and if I press T on the keyboard, we pull up our debug widget, which confirms we're on branch 1, so we know that this data is accurate. If we look to the left, we can see that these are our player choices with the text and branch to go to next. Button 2 takes us to branch 2. So now let's go over how it works. This Create Dialogues event is a custom event. So if I make a new one, here it is, and it's called from the construct script. So I have colon editor set to true so that this runs before playing. We start with clearing existing dialogue branches, so it's not stacking dialogue after dialogue each time the blueprint compiles. From here, you'll want to choose from 2 main custom nodes. If you right-click and search BML, you'll find a series of nodes to choose from, which I recommend taking a look at separately, but we're going to focus on Add Choice Branch and Add Linear Branch. Notice here that this example starts with adding a choice branch. What this does is add a branch where you specify its name, the text that appears, and leaves the player choices pin exposed for you to fill out. From here, you want to drag off player choices and type make, and you'll get make array. From here, each addition will be a choice that the player can make. Now, you could technically just pull off from this blue pin here, type make, and this will give you all the properties that make up a player choice, and you can fill things in as you like. Keep in mind that whatever you don't fill in gets set to default struct values. So that's where another series of custom nodes come in. If you type player choice, you'll get a series of options to choose from both macro and function libraries. Again, feel free to mess around with them. I made these ones that expose less input pins to simplify dialogues by just showing the text branch to go to next, and allow your choices to also be output pins as well. So if we copy what we have here, we can clearly see that we altered the first button's text. Now, my custom nodes may seem pointless at first, but the cool thing lies with the output pins. Choice 2 shows that we'll go to branch 2 when selected, and we can follow the pin directly to where the next branch is. This one is made with a linear branch, and what this one does is act as a single choice dialogue, like a narration or character speaking multiple lines at once, so no choice is necessary. And although our output pin is connected to this branch, it is not necessary. If I disconnect this pin here and just type 2, it's still going to work. Watch, I'll compile, so it's updating. When we play, it works. To confirm further, we can change this to something ridiculous, copy, paste it in, and boom, it still works. See, the debugger shows the name of the branch is no longer 2, but our ridiculous name. But yeah, and then it works exactly the same in whatever the next branch is. You can pull out of it, hook it up to whatever comes next, and it'll be named that accordingly. I'll release another update soon that adds another custom node for adding branches and choices with all the pins exposed. I didn't initially so that you can get dialogues built out neat and simple, but the downside is you can't access every single setting like autocomplete, dialogue settings, camera settings, everything without editing them manually in the component or the editor utility, which gets reset upon recompiling. Oh, and this grayed out pin here, it's not used for anything. It's just meant to act as a spacer to separate the dialogue from the choice. So yeah, those are the straightforward nodes, but I've also built out ones for conditions. Again, it's exposing minimal stuff so that you don't have to deal with hiding every input pin, but let's take a look at DT condition. For the sake of not having to run and press interact each time, I'm gonna set auto start on begin play to true. So in this example, we're asking the player if they want to go for a run. We have two choices, one for running, which costs 1 energy, and the second choice for not running. The second choice, not running, is a basic one, so it's the same node as the previous example, but the one for running is condition based, so it's a little bit more complex. The player choice used here is player choice conditions, and if you search it, you're probably going to find a macro and a function version of the exact same node, so I apologize in advance for any duplication. They're exactly the same, with the only difference being one is from the function library and the other is from the macro library. This is still being developed, and each offers their own set of benefits that I'm still learning, so just putting it out there. Anyway, we have the choice text, the branch, ending dialog, and the player condition pin. Again, from here, you want to drag out and search make. These are all the properties that make up the condition struct and will need to be filled in based on what you're going for. In our example, we're asking if the player has enough energy to go for a run, and we want to have two different responses based on if the player does or does not have the energy required. So to recreate this, we're going to drag out of the map and search make, and like the array, we can add as many conditions and amounts as we want to check for. In this case, it's energy, and we want to see if the player has at least 1. Next, we want to actually change the branch based on the condition result. So let's set this bool to true, and let's also set this bool to true, which will deduct the value from the player if they meet it. Now we're going to set the name of the pass and fail branches that the conditions should point to. In our example, we can see how it works here. I've split the dialog using a sequence where the top row is the flow if the player meets the condition and passes, and the bottom row is what happens if the player fails. If we run this and flip on the debug widget, we can see that if we go for a run, our energy goes from 10 to 9, so we know that we're up here. Going for a run again is going to require 10 energy, which we don't have, thus resulting in the fail branch missing energy that we specified back over here. So trying to go for a run again is going to result in the fail branch. And you don't need to use a sequence. It's purely for cosmetic purposes. You could technically have all the branches in one straight line, but then it just gets hard to track and see visually. But if you're really particular, you could even straight up make more custom events and other event graphs and be as intricate and as detailed as you like in regard to organizing all your dialogues. The last example is what I've had in my mind for a while now, but I haven't thought of like a good way to build it out until now, which is a combat-based dialogue system. First, I'm gonna turn off start on begin play for the previous blueprint and turn it on for this combat blueprint. And here we can see a more elaborate dialogue system using this pseudo dialogue tree. We start on branch 1 right here, which gives us a series of choices, which all have their own subtrees of actions and return actions. I don't know why, but the particle effects got botched on the upload, so I'll fix it. But these are supposed to look really dope with cool effects, but this is basically a rough draft on how you would start building out a crazy complex dialogue using blueprints. There's another custom event I built out, which actually could be consolidated into another custom node, but for now, it could just be copied and pasted between your own blueprints, which would allow you to set up global settings for all your dialogues. It'll overwrite any settings you currently have set up, so if you're trying to avoid that, you'd have to hide the pins in each struct and then make sure you call the event at the end, which in this case would be on step 4 of this sequence. This will be worked on more, but it's just here. Oh yeah, another custom node I made was the specific branch checker, which will allow you to easily check if the current actor is on a specific branch and return a true or false statement that you can run logic with afterwards. In this example, I have it so that when using a potion, the potion sound plays. By default, the player doesn't have any, but if we go and add it to the player's conditions and run the logic, we'll trigger this section here. And if you're unsure on how I did this, you can right-click on the dialog component, add event, and then click continued. This basically makes an event that fires each time the dialog continues on, and then runs a check to see if we're on a specific branch. If so, fire the logic that comes afterwards. The last thing is that I have it where if the player chooses a combat action, an animation performs and the dialogue says what the player did and continues itself automatically by using the autocomplete node here. Because I have animations play, the output pin is the length of the animation, which can be plugged in here to auto continue for the duration of the animation. I disconnected it because I felt like it took a little too long to complete, but it's available if you want to use it. And because it's auto-completing instead of the player having any input, I don't want to hear the selection sound that plays, so I'm pulling out of the selection sound, making an array so it's overwritten with an empty value. So when we test it, we hear the selection sound plays when we make our choice, and then silence when the dialogue completes. But yeah, that's all I got. Apologies if this was dragged out with any redundancy. I've been kind of out of the loop in making videos lately, but I hope I was at least a little bit thorough. Like always, if you got questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Lates.